On today's show, I'm breaking down the 6 most important things that I'm watching on the Rangers from now until the end of the season. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into the 6 biggest storylines I'm watching from now until the end of the season, the show is brought to you by SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop for your next plumbing, h-vac, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. Now, the first storyline I am watching from now till the end of this season is, of course, Jacob deGrom's rehab. I got to see him in person last week in Frisco, and boy howdy, is he much better than AA hitters should be facing. I mean, the stuff is absolutely electric. He's still refining that command, working on the fastball, the changeup, slider command. The slider looked just absolutely unhittable for, albeit not a great San Antonio Missions team, but still actual professional baseball hitters, pretty advanced when you compare them to most professional baseball hitters around the world. Still, he made them look absolutely horrendous. And in case you forgot, the tagline with Jacob deGrom, as always, is he is the best pitcher on the planet, with the caveat of when healthy. Made rehab start number 1 of what I believe will be 4. That is the plan, for him to make 4 rehab starts in total. His next rehab start is going to be Tuesday in Round Rock. He will likely have a target of 3 innings pitched, 45 total pitches in that start. And then if we're going on that same timeline, then his next rehab start, the third one, would be, again, in Round Rock on the following Sunday. That would be targeting, adding another inning and another 15 pitches, so 4 innings, 60 pitches at that point. And then, if all goes well and follows the same timeline, the final rehab start would be in Frisco, almost assuredly, either September 5th or 6th. He will be pitching 5 innings, around 75 pitches, bringing him on track for his original, or I guess as of a couple weeks ago, maybe it was just a week ago, when the timeline for him to actually be up and in the major leagues would be September 10th or 11th, that series in Arizona against the Diamondbacks. Maybe they might push it back one day, so it would be the 12th against that Mariners offense, which has been quite frankly terrible, as opposed to an Arizona Diamondbacks offense that has been absolutely cooking since the All-Star break. But either way, I cannot wait to see Jacob deGrom back on the mound, even though the Rangers are very much out of it. And you think, well, why bother, pushing him? Why bother, getting him on the mound in a big league game? Well, just getting back on the mound for the first time since April 30th, I believe, of last year, the end of April of last year, it's a big deal for him. Also, when you're in the rehab process, you don't just stop because the big league team stinks. You still got to get that arm fully rehabbed, the elbow fully back into condition, and just get back on the mound and then go about a normal offseason. I don't think the Rangers are necessarily pushing him for a more aggressive timeline on his rehab in order to just get him back on the mound and, in hopes of saving their season, because that ship done sailed. That ship done sailed about 2-3 weeks ago, maybe. I mean, once you lost those final 2 games of that Houston series, lost the season series to them, and then continued to fall further in the toilet, Jacob deGrom is not saving this season unless he is going to be hitting in, 4 or 5 positions and hitting like an all-star. That's not fixing this broken end of the season. But just getting him back on the hill is so darn important. Getting him healthy for 2025 is so darn important. And I mean, I think we forget, because he hasn't pitched so much, how important he is to this team competing in 2025. And the fact that they won the World Series with only 6 starts from him is absolutely unbelievable and incredible. And oh, by the way, they don't even get to the playoffs without those 6 starts that he made. I know it was only 6 starts, 30 and a third innings, but the Rangers went 6-0 in starts by Jacob deGrom. 6-0. Remember how they barely skated by into the playoffs last year after that disastrous collapse in the back half of August and early parts of September? Every game mattered last year, and all 6 of those from Jacob deGrom really, really mattered. So getting him back for 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 starts, probably more likely 2 or 3 at the big league level this year is going to be very important. And getting him healthy for next year with a normal offseason of work is incredibly important. Maybe the most important thing for the Rangers in the back half of this year. Second thing I'm watching, which maybe just as, if not more important for the Rangers competing in 2025, is Adolis Garcia's bounce back towards the end of this season. The beginning of the year, Adolis Garcia was incredible in the month of April and March. Hit .293, a .932 OPS, 8 home runs. He looked on pace to just destroy what he had done the year before, where he was an all-star for the second time, where he won ALCS MVP. It was like, okay, Adolis Garcia is that dude. And then the calendar turned to May, and things went very, 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 very far off the rails and stayed off the rails. In the month of May, he was hitting .165 with a .544 OPS in 25 games. Then he followed it up in June by hitting under 200 again with an OPS of .632. Then in July, when you thought, okay, maybe now's the time where he turns around, nope, hit .174 with a .504 OPS, his worst month of the season. You thought, oh dear God, this could get ugly. This has gotten ugly. It has been ugly. And then, calendar turned to August. Things started looking a little bit differently for Adolis Garcia. In 21 games in August, he's hitting .295. It was really that road trip against the Yankees where he kind of just blooped a lot of singles. Wasn't hitting the ball particularly hard, but was just finding some holes, going the opposite field, not doing too much, which he had been doing for the previous 3 months of the season. And then he started to go on a roll, and then he had that series in Boston, and you think, okay, all right, this is him. You know, he's not going to fix this Rangers team because the rest of the offense needed to pick it up about 2 months prior. Would have been nice if he only had the down month of May and started turning things on again in June. But alas, that's not the season the Rangers had. But it was getting to the point at the end of July when he was, 3 months, half the season, slumping. You think, oh God, what do you do with Adolis Garcia? Because the defense has fallen off substantially. I mean, his outs above average is in the 5th percentile of baseball. The arm strength's still there, but the arm value is in the 33rd percentile of baseball. He's not making smart throws, making strong throws, but he's missing cutoff man. He's making bad choices of when he's throwing. He's having a lot of just misplays in the outfield. The speed isn't quite what it once was, and he has just really fallen off a cliff defensively. And if offensively he's not producing anything either, you think that this not only isn't an everyday, this isn't an all-star, this isn't a core fixture of your lineup, this might not even be an everyday player. The Rangers might just have to cut bait with him, DFA him again. And well, I don't think they would be doing it for Mike Foltynewicz this time. He would be at a point where the Rangers just could not keep starting him every day next year if this was the case, if he kept doing this down the stretch. But I mean, he was still hitting the ball hard. He was still barreling it up. I mean, he was still, his average exit velocity this year and barrel percentage and hard hit rate, all of those in the top 15% of baseball still on the season. So he was still hitting the ball hard, but the swing decisions, the expanding the zone, the struggles against fastballs, and how easy it was to just get him behind the count and get him, swinging out of his shoes was, frankly, kind of terrifying for the Rangers' future for those 3 months. But having this bounce back in April or in August, not in April, having this bounce back in August, having just some good at-bats, good swing decisions, good, exit velocity numbers, hitting some home runs, hitting some balls over the fence, hitting some, meaningful baseball. He's got an 814 OPS in 21 games in August, and the Rangers just needed him to have a good end of the season to feel good about next year, because if the Rangers offense does this again next year, they're not competing in 2025. And they need a bounce back from Adolis Garcia. He has been the biggest fall off of the Rangers' offensive fall offs from where they expected to what has been produced. There has been no bigger difference than Adolis Garcia. So just him having good at-bats, having a good final, hopefully full-on 2 months of the end of the season. We'll see if he keeps this up again in September and finishes out August strong. But the Rangers desperately need him to get back to the All-Star and the ALCS MVP that he was if they want to compete in 2025. Coming up, we're talking about a couple of young pitchers who I think the Rangers really have to be feeling good about this year. Right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM. Order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere in just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we'll be talking about what the Rangers' 2025 rotation will look like. And tomorrow, the Rangers take on the White Sox. You can catch every pitch of the Hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search Rangers. 7:10 p.m. Central Time. Two lefties, Andrew Heaney and Garrett Crochet. I will be very much locked into that one. But you know who I'm really locked into? Is every single start of Cody Bradford throughout the rest of this season. That is the number 3 storyline I'm watching from now till the end of the year. And Cody Bradford this year, I feel like I know that there have been so many injuries to this Rangers team this year. Many that have been very devastating, very frustrating for young guys. You're waiting to see what they were going to do this year. I feel like none of them have been more frustrating than Evan Carter losing 110 games, 115 games or so, 116 I think is the total number of games he will have ended up losing this season due to a back injury that he just couldn't quite come back from. Josh Young's injury, obviously very, very frustrating. I think he's still getting his timing back, but those first 4 games were electric, and I love me some Josh Young. And not seeing him for a decent chunk of this year, I think really, really hurt the Rangers offense. And obviously Jacob deGrom and the other injuries, blah, 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 blah. But none of them, I think, have gotten less, looked at, less notoriety that they deserve than Cody Bradford's injuries this year. The guy was absolutely phenomenal for the first 3 starts of the season, and then goes on the IL with what they thought was just some lower back tightness and ends up being stress fractures in his ribs, and he misses basically half the season as well, but he hasn't really thought about. And I have thought about him a lot. I have thought about what Cody Bradford would look like when he came back. When he would come back, there was just so much up in the air and so much unknown of just him having to just basically just rest and recover and wait and see when it got better. And it's a bummer that it took this long to get him back in the rotation, because when he has been in the rotation, the fact that he came back and he was just going to slot in the bullpen, not that any injury to Max Scherzer or anybody else is good, but giving Cody Bradford that opportunity to get back into the rotation, because he did nothing to lose his starting role in terms of his performance before he went on the IL. It was just a matter of older guys with better track records getting healthier. But I really wanted to see him back in the rotation to finish out this season because he is so important to this Rangers team moving forward. So far this year, he has made 8 starts. And in those 8 starts, he's got 47 innings under his belt, 42 strikeouts, just 7 walks, a 2.49 ERA. You go and look at some of his advanced numbers. I mean, obviously the velocity is not going to blow you away. You would very much like him to go to the whatever flexible school, whatever magic was worked on Cole Reagans to make him gain 5 miles an hour of velocity on his fastball. I would very much like that to happen to Cody Bradford this offseason, to work on his core strength and flexibility and just happen to get an extra 5 miles an hour of velo on his fastball. And then also have him, learn how to throw a really nasty slider like Reagans did with Kansas City. But even if he doesn't, the pitcher that he is now, that's at least a back-end rotation starter. So far this year, his expected ERA is right around where his actual ERA is. Actual ERA, 3.31. Expected ERA, 3.54. Expected batting average in the top half of baseball, 65th percentile. He's getting more chase on his fastball. He is in the top 17% of the league of getting guys to expand the zone, something he wasn't doing very well last year. And his walk rate in the top 3% of baseball. This dude gets down the mound. He knows exactly where he wants to throw his pitches, and he is very, very accurate with those pitches. The strikeout rate is about league average, which is great for a guy who is mostly probably going to be a back-end rotation starter. But, if he keeps up putting up numbers like this, that's mid-rotation guy. And if he is in the back of your rotation performing like a mid-rotation guy, even if he is performing like a back-end of your rotation guy, adding one of those starts, slotting in one of those rotation spots where you don't have to go get another starting pitcher on the free agent market because they are so gosh darn expensive. If you can finally have that homegrown starter, and that homegrown starter is Cody Bradford, and then you start to add in the guys like Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter, and there's less pressure on those guys to be homegrown starters. Now, I'm not saying all 3 of those guys are going to be, basically 3/5 of the Mariners rotation next year. That's not the case. But if they can be competent, if Cody Bradford alone can be a competent starting pitcher, a number 4 or 5 in your rotation next year, that is huge. Huge. Massive developmental win for the Rangers, getting a guy in the 6th round coming off of thoracic outlet surgery, a hometown kid, a hometown homegrown kid, the Aledo native, the Baylor alum, the Texas boy, going in there and slotting in every 5th day and giving you 6 quality innings like he's done most of his starts. That is just such a massive developmental win that I don't think anybody anticipated heading into this year. I think I might have. After last year when he was thrust into the rotation, when the Rangers rotation got a little bit uneasy on the depth towards the end of the year, he had a start where he was rolling through 3 innings in Cleveland, and I declared for all to hear, Cody Bradford is a starter. Keep him in this rotation. Put him in the rotation next year. This guy is good enough to be a starter every 5th day, and then proceeded to get shelled by those Cleveland Guardians last year. I felt very stupid, but still confident in Cody Bradford eventually being a competent starting pitcher. And so far this year, he has been more than competent. It has been a big, big win for the Rangers development system. And I want to see him keep doing it before I feel extra confident about being right about him last year when very few else were. Cody Bradford is important to this team, and I will be watching every single start of his very, very closely. As I will be watching every single start of Wyatt Langford's finish to the season. Wyatt Langford has not at all had the rookie season that I think he expected, that going into this season, coming out of spring training, heck, even last year. I mean, the track to the big leagues has been so fast, so whirlwind, that we kind of forget that he's a 22-year-old with 200 professional plate appearances heading into this season, plus however many were sprinkled in AAA's playoffs for 3-4 games, however many that was. But he's been a rookie, a decent one, not a terrible one. He's been a much better fielder than anyone anticipated. I mean, he's been a little bit above league average in terms of outs above average. The arm strength has been better than expected. The routes have been circuitous at times. He's had a couple of misplays on what should have been easy catches, but he's got the physical tools and the work ethic to be out there and be a pretty decent left fielder, maybe even a decent center fielder one day. Probably not next year, but maybe one day. But the offensive numbers just haven't been there. The Rangers were probably banking on a lot more out of him offensively this year than they probably should have been. And with the fall off of basically everybody else in this offense outside of Corey Seager and outside of Nathaniel Lowe, who has been about what Nathaniel Lowe has been in his career, this is a little bit too much to ask for the kid. It's been a lot of learning experience, a lot of improvement, a lot of flashes of brilliance we've seen from Wyatt Langford, but I really hope to see a strong finish to the season for him. He has got all the tools in the world, and even though he's rocking a 681 OPS, a little below league average, the 7 home runs, not what I expected from him, even with missing that time with a hamstring injury. The speed has been well above what anybody, I think, expected heading into this season. The chase rate is in the top 20% of baseball. Bat speed's elite, but it's felt like he's been a little passive at the plate at times, just waiting for pitchers to make a mistake and kind of letting those pitchers nibble and getting called on strike 3 a little bit too much. He will work a lot this offseason on getting better plans of attack, I think. I'm hoping. The raw tools, the physicality, everything is there. Especially the floor has been significantly raised with what he's done defensively. That I think offensively next year, I'm really excited to see what he can put together in year 2 after knowing what it takes to be a big leaguer. Kind of prepare himself a little bit better heading into spring training, of just having a better idea of what it takes to be a big leaguer. And even though this year hasn't gone exactly how he wanted, still, there have been plenty of flashes of brilliance. Just really hoping they can end on a really nice note for the young star rookie Wyatt Langford. Coming up, we're talking about another breakout, a breakout player this year, and one guy coming back up to the big leagues this week, who I'm really excited to see what he can do. Right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment you can cancel any single time. You can also go look at the action for some of the awards this season. Unfortunately, Wyatt Langford, who I just talked about, is not in the top 6 of AL Rookie of the Year voting right now. He is at 8th place behind Mason Miller, behind Colt Keith, Luis Heel, Wilyer Abreu, Ceddanne Rafael, Austin Wells, and of course at the top, Colton Cowser. Maybe with a final push, Wyatt Langford can get himself back up into the top 3 and maybe make himself a finalist for AL Rookie of the Year. Or if you want to look at AL Cy Young Awards, right now, former Ranger great Cole Reagans has the 6th best odds. Former Ranger great Emmanuel Clase has the 3rd best odds. So go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com. Now, the number 5 thing that I'm watching from now until the end of the season is Joshua H. for Hits Real Good, All-Star, Pookie Smith. How does he finish this season? Obviously, the first half, he was fantastic, should have been an All-Star. He has been the breakout offensive player this year for the Texas Rangers. There is no question about that. For the accumulation of the season, he has been the Rangers' 2nd best hitter. At the All-Star break, there was a question of if he was the Rangers' 1st best hitter for the season. But since that All-Star break, it has been tough sledding for Josh Smith. Spent some time in the leadoff position, which did not go well. He's been back to hitting 3rd, which just overall offensively has not been going well. The first half, 90 games for him, 10 home runs, a slash line of 293, 392, 469, and 861 OPS. He was downright elite. Elite. Defensively, third base, shortstop, I don't think he played any second base so far. Actually, he played one game at second base this year. But overall, defensively, he has been exceptional on the left side of the infield. Offensively, he has been much, much better this year than he was last year. Made some small changes in his swing, which have had big, big repercussions. But since the All-Star break, he has fallen off substantially. In 32 games after the All-Star break, he is hitting 200 with an on-base of 256 and slugging just 280. It has been brutal for him in this second half. There was some worries that he would have a similar season to, well, his fellow bench bat, Ezekiel Duran, as to last year. 2023 Ezekiel Duran, absolutely sensational in the first half, stepping up in a big way for an injured player on the left side of the Rangers infield, mostly Corey Seager. Ezekiel Duran should have been an all-star last year, had good enough numbers, and was having a fantastic season. Then couldn't really sustain those numbers in the second half, could not really buy a plate appearance in the second half, especially down the stretch, trying to make up for Josh Young's injury for a 6-week period. He and Josh Smith were, splitting time at third base. Smith was a little bit better than him down the stretch, but still Smith wasn't inspiring that much confidence offensively. Neither was Ezekiel Duran down the stretch. And with Josh Smith's first half being so much better than whatever he's done at the big league level before, you think, okay, is this sustainable? You look at some of the advanced metrics, and he's not hitting the ball particularly hard. The bat speed isn't elite. The barrel rate isn't super elite. The average exit velo, not super great. The expected slugging and batting average were way below what he was actually putting up. And so you think, okay, maybe this isn't going to sustain, but him at least being, an average offensive everyday player, because he has been an everyday offensive player. He has needed to be an everyday offensive player with the offensive drop-off of everybody else. But if he goes back to being what he was before, he doesn't need to be, an 850 OPS guy to be an everyday player on the Rangers next year. He just doesn't. Right now, I'd probably slot him in every day in left field. I'd probably put Evan Carter every day in center field, and at DH/right field, I'd split time between Adolis and Wyatt, depending on the day, because I think even Wyatt's glove in right field, even though he doesn't have that much experience in right, might be an upgrade right now over Adolis with some of the more careless plays that he's made, especially when we look at next year, Adolis being another year older. I think that might end up being the move. But Josh Smith, there is a spot for him in this lineup, because I don't expect the Rangers to go out and sign some big bat this offseason. They might even sign a medium bat that would, take up an everyday spot in left field. But right now, there's a spot for the taking for Josh Smith. He's going to need to rebound for what he's done in the second half. I mean, immediately following the All-Star break, it was really, really rough. In August, it has still been, pretty rough. It is a 519 OPS in the month of August. The slugging below 250, the on base below 250, which is not what you're looking for from Josh Smith. The power, he's not going to hit 30 homers in a year. That's just not going to happen. He's probably never going to hit 20, and that's fine too. But if he can have an on base around 350, that and a slug around 350 to 400, that's an everyday player. That's a decent player every day in left field. That's a spot in your lineup that you feel better about, because there has been so much fall off offensively this year. But he's going to need to step it up in these final months, or the Rangers will not be thinking about him as an everyday player next year. They'll be thinking about him like they thought about him before this year, unfortunately, as just a bench bat, but albeit a pretty darn good one. Now, the last thing I'm looking for towards the end of this season is Jack Leiter's call back up to the big leagues. What will he look like in those starts? How many starts will he get at the big league level from now till the end of the season? His first one is almost certainly going to be on Wednesday against the Chicago White Sox, which, if you are pitching against major leaguers, then the Chicago White Sox are the best team to face to feel confident about your recent turnaround. The 2 starts he's had in AAA, I talked a lot about it on Friday's show. I think it talked a lot about it the week before that as well. Leiter looks like the ideal version of himself, looks like the guy they drafted at the 2nd overall pick back in 2021. The fastball has added velocity. He looks much, much better just in terms of his overall body language, his looseness on the mound. The slider looks as nasty as ever, and just getting that taste of those 3 big league starts out of his mouth is an important thing, because the numbers overall don't look amazing for Leiter on the big league season. There have been at least one of his starts, not all 3, that he just got knocked around, but his numbers should be a little better. There were some defensive miscues in Detroit. There were some defensive miscues in Oakland as well. Versus Cleveland, he just got absolutely battered. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But just getting back on a big league mound while he is looking like a much better version of himself, getting some confidence in himself with some big league starts. We'll see how many exactly he gets, but getting that confidence back, especially heading into next year, where I'll talk more about it on tomorrow's show, about how big a part he's going to play in the Rangers rotation in 2025. He's going to play a pretty decent part in the Rangers rotation. And they're going to figure out, is this guy actually a starter, or are we going to shove him in the pen, let him go out there throwing 100 with one of the nastiest sliders we've seen in quite some time, outside of, Jacob deGrom's, but with an absolutely disgusting slider, just be a 2-pitch guy and go be an elite back-end reliever? Or is he going to be a competent starter? Those starts down the stretch, they're not going to tell us everything, but just getting the taste of those first 3 big league starts that had some moments of brilliance, had some moments of him looking like a rookie, getting that taste out of his mouth and having his final appearances of the season be quality starts in the big leagues, that is very, very important down the stretch for Jack Leiter heading into the offseason, and also for this team and what they're looking for in 2025. That's going to do it for today's shows. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And one last little bonus note, one thing I'm looking for, just Chris Young, can he get a contract already? Kind of absolutely insane that he hasn't at this point. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.